Hello and welcome to Once Upon a Time. I'm Dr. Jody and this is On the Go Radio, powering the voice of community and change. I'm really excited to have a guest today, Lola Charles, and Lola is an accomplished storyteller. She's a sign language consultant and also an author. So before I go any further, I usually invite my guests to tell their once upon a time story. Lola, what's your once upon a time story?
Well, once upon a time, I remember when I was in the 7th grade and I took my mother's fish bag from out of the freezer to carry my lunch, and it thawed out and they had to evacuate the school. Once upon a time. That must have been really exciting for the school administrators and the teachers and the students.
Yeah. So that's a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do, particularly around writing, because I know you've written a few books and you have a wonderful character that you feature in your books. Tell us a little bit about what motivates you to write children's books.
Well, I know it was from coming from a large family with 10 siblings. And always dreaming about being the only child. What would it be like not to have so many people around you? And having to understand that you have to wait, you know, and and personalities are developed from learning how to wait. So you had to have a good personality, a good temper, a good demeanor, or just, all the time around children. My siblings, taught me how to stand back and become more visual and try to find ways to express myself.
Okay.
And hear my own voice and know when I was, being funny or trying to have my way or upset or moody.
And where were you in the lineup of your siblings? Near the older or younger?
Younger. Okay. I am 4th from the bottom.
Okay.
And 8 from the top. So I'm somewhere closer to the bottom.
Okay. Well, tell us a little bit about your main character.
My first works is 3 books, 3 children's books that I wrote. As a matter of fact, Dr. Monko, I wrote them around the same time, like in a 3-day span.
Okay.
I think a book a day. And it was about my sister.
Okay.
And how I always wanted to keep up with her, but I noticed that she was mischievous. Her thing was, you don't tell adults what kids do. It was the total opposite of what you were supposed to do. Yes, because I needed mom and dad to protect me from some of those siblings and kids outside those doors, some of their friends.
Right.
Who would get you told for being smaller and younger. So it's a story from out of my childhood about my one sibling, well, 2 siblings, a brother and a sister, and myself, who we grew up closer in age, and I was always trying to keep up with them. And my sister, Boopy, she was the oldest of the 3 of us in that group, and she would make mischief. And her main thing was, you don't tell, because this is what we do. Yes, and you have to keep up.
Okay. Well, would you share a passage or two from Boopy? What's the title of this Boopy text?
Well, the first book is Why Was Boopy So Bad?
Okay.
And it is the first of the 3 books that are now published that are part of a series. And all of the books are surrounded around Boopie and some of the things that she did.
Okay.
Boopie was colorful. Sean would always, he was the middle child. My brother, he would always make sure if I was going to come along that I wasn't going to tell him Boopie. I wasn't going to rat her out under any circumstances. And I know that that meant that I wasn't going to get to come along on some of her adventures. That became our adventures daily. Why was Boopie so bad? Starts off like this. Why was Boopie so bad? I don't know. All I can tell you is that every time Sean, Boopie, and I had to go to the store for Mama, Boopie made mischief along the way. As soon as we started for the store, a light would go off in Boopie's head. Boopie would say to Sean, "We can't take Lo." That's me, my character. "We can't take Lo with us. She's going to tell Mom and Dad." Then Sean would say, "She ain't going to say nothing." And he would look at me, "Are you Lo?" I would have to promise Sean, but you just don't know how bad I wanted to tell Mama. A promise is a promise. And since Sean was my favorite brother, I kept my mouth shut. Besides, Boopie was always just waiting to push me down if she saw tears or heard me say, "I'm going to tell Dad instead." Believe me, the only safe answer was to swear not to tell. I always tried to cross my fingers, my toes, so I could take it back later.
And isn't that typical of children? They know what to do.
Yes.
Don't they?
Yes. Boopie would venture out through the alley, and I would notice a few flowers that grew in the alley. I wonder, does that still happen? Yeah, flowers in the alley. Yes. Boopie would stop at her friend's house, Jessica Parker, and she would start a fight with her. And Jessica fought really well until Boopie did one of her trip-you-up moves, and Jessica would usually land on the ground crying. Once the fight stopped, Boopie laughed and wiped Jessica tears all at the same time. I just never could understand why Boopie was so bad, or why on earth Boopie or Jessica would always come out of the house 3 times a week to try to sharpen her fighting skills on Boopie. Boopie and Jessica had a language all their own. Today, they both would be top contenders for the Women's Championship of Professional Boxing. Every day with Boopie was an adventure of her own. Of its own, for sure. We would always leave home early to walk to school, and Mama would say, "Hold Lo's hand." I was the youngest and the most fearful. I don't think Boopie was ever scared of anything. She was fearless. My brother Sean's nickname was Paddywhack because he was known for going crazy on you if you bothered him. One thing we all had in common was our love of laughter. But to tell you the truth, most of the time Boopie's stuff wasn't funny to me. Boopie was just outright down to the bone. Hold the popcorn bad. Once on the way to school, Boopie decided to pitch rocks. I didn't think it was funny to throw rocks at grown-ups' cars or trucks. Finally, on this day, Boopie's rock hit the wrong white van. The van screeched to a stop and out rushed a Doberman Pinscher. Boopie just ran and laughed. The dog took off after Sean. Sean jumped a fence, and so did the dog. All I could do was cry and cry and scream and cry. At the last moment, the driver of the van yelled a command, and the dog turned around and trotted back. The man asked where we lived and said he was going to take us home. Well, Boopie just stood there looking very serious, but wouldn't say a word. I was still crying uncontrollably. None of us knew where Sean had run off to. The man finally decided we should write down our address and phone number and then go on to school. I still remember what he said to us. You should always get to school on time. Never make stops along the way. Always listen to your parents and obey their commands, just as my dog was trained to obey my commands. The man mentioned how vital it was that our caregivers knew what we were doing when we were away from their watchful eyes, because they loved us and needed to be able to trust us to be responsible. I was so upset because Sean had not come back. Boopie still refused to hold my hand on the way to school. She said that I had better not tell because I had promised not to tell. Yes. We were quiet the rest of the way. I kept thinking to myself, why was Boopie always so bad? Sean and I spent the day worrying how much trouble we would be in when we got home. At the end of the day, Sean, Boopie, and I walked home. Boopie whispered, I gave that man the wrong phone number and the wrong address. But Boopie and Sean both Boopie and Sean breathed the breath of sigh of relief.
And we probably all know children like Boopie. And Boopie is quite mischievous. And I'm sure there's a moral to the story. And so I'm anxious to get to what happens with this Boopie. Does she really get in trouble? Does she get in trouble, or does Mom and Dad find out what she's done?
Yes. Boopie, like the rest of the kids in the family, she would also get put on punishments. But here's the problem. Boopie and I shared the same bedroom.
Oh.
Well, Boopie decided to tell me what was going on inside of her head when Mom put us on punishment together. Before going to bed, I got enough courage to ask Boopie why was she so bad, mean, and nasty. Finally, Boopie decided to tell me what was going on inside of her. She said that life had been different before I was born, with only her and Sean. She cried. Things began changing too fast. Plus, she liked it that Sean was not a big crybaby like me. She never felt good enough. Her hair was not long enough, and she was not pretty enough. She also said people always point out differences, not in your personality, but in things that don't matter, like your eye color, or what you wear, or your skin color. Boopie said, I hate being compared to other children, especially my sister and brother. When Gramps gave me the nickname Boopie, she said it was because I was the only child who did not look puzzled when she said boo, which was her way of saying hello. Instead, I would laugh and laugh and laugh. I became her Boopie baby. I was surprised to see her crying. Boopie never cried. I had always thought that Boopie was born bad. It was at that moment that I realized I had been wrong. Boopie was not bad. Boopie was just very sad.
Wow. And I love the way you, at the end of the story, show, and our audience may not be able to see the illustrations, but on the radio. But for those of you viewing on the internet, we see a picture of Boopie on the bed crying her little eyes out because she's finally had an opportunity to really express what was going on with her. And for parents, you know, when you have new babies coming to the home and new siblings, it's hard for the older siblings to cope with having these new little ones in the house. So Boopie was an example of that. And she just kind of let it build up inside her over the years, those feelings of not being the youngest child anymore. So really wonderful story. And talk a little bit about the moral of the story, because I like the way at the end of Lola's picture book, she's included both the moral of the story as well as some discussion ideas for parents and or if teachers use this book in the classroom. So talk about your moral.
Yes, each story has a moral, and the moral is stated in the first book, and the second two books, or the next two books that I wrote, the story becomes a moral story. So this moral for the first book, Why Was Boopy So Bad, talks about change, how change is inevitable. Instead of fighting change, we need to make it our friend. Changes help us see what can become of our ideals. Good ideals make good deeds.
Oh, I love that. And change is so critical, and we see changes in our homes consistently. I don't think you can go a day or a week or a month without some type of change in your home, both in your family life, maybe in your work life. But we want to really focus on change. And with change, I also like to talk about hope, because I think hope can go hand in hand with change. And so we're going to talk about a few other books that talk about hope and change. And so thank you so much, Lola. Again, welcome. The title of the book is Why Was Boopy So Bad? And it was written by Lola Charles. Lola, can you tell the audience how they might get a copy of your book?
Yes, you can write me at P.O. Box 19307, Detroit, Michigan, 48219-9998. The books are made to order.
Okay.
And you give me 2 weeks and they will be delivered.
Okay. And we'll repeat that again for the audience. Again, Lola, Why Was Boopy So Bad by Lola Charles.
You can write me in care of Alex Ray Inc. AlexRaiInc. P.O. Box 19307, Detroit, Michigan, 48219-9998.
Thank you. Tell us the title of the other two picture books as well.
Yes, the second book, first off, let me acknowledge my illustrator is James Pickett, a young man who recently graduated and worked with me on this project. He was a work for hire from art school, Center for Creative Studies. And the late Terry Villegas. Terry Villegas is my editor, and it's to my understanding as a publisher, as a writer, no book goes into the library without an editor. Yes, so Terry Villegas, thank you and rest in peace. The second book is called When Boopy Tells You, You Don't Tell. And the third book is The Fight of Boopy's Life. It's where when Boopy fights her friend.
Okay.
Her best friend.
All right.
The cost for the books are $19.95 per book. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. This is On the Go Radio, powering the voice of community and change. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have our guest, book buddy, Lola Charles, who is an author as well as a storyteller and a sign language consultant. So we want to talk a little more about this whole notion of hope and change. And one of the books that I enjoy helping me really reflect on the importance of change and the role that we all can play in terms of change is A Sweet Smell of Roses. And sometimes by Angela Johnson, illustrated by Eric Velasquez. And sometimes we think that only certain people can affect change, and that only you have to maybe belong to a certain group, or have a certain profession, or be part of a certain economic group. But really, everybody can influence change.
Yes.
And so A Sweet Smell of Roses reminds me of the power of just a few individuals, and in this case, their children. And it says, after a night of soft rain, there is a sweet smell of roses. As my sister Minnie and I slipped past Mama's door and out of the house down Charlotte Street. Now, we don't know where these two young ladies are going. Let's see. Past the early morning milkman, over the cobbled bridge, and through the curb market, to where everyone waits to march. Minnie and I are only waist high to most of them. Waist high, Minnie and me, waist high, holding hands and waiting to march. Now, this march could be a long time ago, or it could be a few months ago, because we've been seeing a wave of change with protests and marches taking place across the United States. Just in January, when the president was inaugurated, there was lots of protests around that, and lots of marching, and people really voicing their displeasure. There is a sweet smell of roses as everyone waits for Dr. King to speak, and the colors bright light from the sun on the flowers beside the road as we listen to Dr. King on the megaphone says, "We are right. We march for equality and freedom." So we know that this book is about the civil rights movement and the marches that took place at that time. Then we start to march, Minnie and me. We look ahead and walk faster like him, clapping in time with our feet, looking ahead just like him. There is a sweet smell of roses even as we march past the people who scream, shout, and say, "You are not right. Equality can't be yours." Then we look further down the road and keep holding hands, feeling a part of it all, walking our way toward freedom. And as I read and reflected on this book, I thought about the Black Lives Matter movement and the marches that they have had over the last several years. So marching and trying to affect change has happened throughout our history. There is a sweet smell of roses as more people start marching with us, pouring out of the side streets, clapping and singing, "Freedom, freedom." Then someone picks me up and puts me on his shoulder. Somebody picks Minnie up too, and we are high above everybody, still marching. And the signs, freedom now, we march for our rights now. I know a lot of the marches now, you hear people shouting, no justice, no peace. So looking for ways that we can affect change. There is a sweet smell of roses as we all gather in the center of town, all together, all here, listening to Dr. King as the sun gets higher in the sky. He talks about peace, love, nonviolence, and change for everybody, and the sun gets higher in the sky. When it's time to go, we skip back hand in hand, Minnie and me singing freedom songs along the streets. Through the curved market, over the Cobb Bridge, and past the mailman to our house on Charlotte Street. Then there is Mama, worried face, waiting there for us. She smiles after a while, hugging us, then takes our hands, and we tell her about the march. The curtains float apart, and there is a sweet smell of roses all through our house. And such a lovely illustration. All of the illustrations by Valcrest are in black and white with this touch of red throughout. And the red roses at the very end of the story really captures the essence of a day of young people trying to work to impact what is going on across the country in terms of equality and freedom for everyone. So that's another example of the way change can be part of not only our personal lives, but in terms of society and our whole desire to want to see social change among us. So that's a good example. And again, that's A Sweet Smell of Roses by Angela Johnson. And it is available in most of our local libraries, and as well as you could probably order it from Amazon and some of the other book vendors. Let's have you, before we wrap up, we're going to have you again repeat how we can get our hands on your books, Lola, because we do want the listening audience to be able to contact you and order your book. So please go ahead, or I'll go ahead and announce it. The book is Why Was Boopy So Bad by Lola Charles, and you can order it through Alexray Incorporated, ALEXRAI Incorporated, and that's P.O. Box 19307, Detroit, Michigan 48219 9998, and all of the books are $19.95 per book. So please know that we appreciate you coming today, Lola, and sharing with us your Boopy picture books. And I'd love to invite you to come back to share the other two.
Thank you, Dr. Mongo.
And I'd like to close with a quote from one of my favorite books, and you know every week I have a favorite book. But this is one of my favorite books because it gets to the notion of hope and change, and how we all hopefully can help see that come to fruition. So this book is called Our Enduring Spirit. It's President Barack Obama's first words to America, his inauguration address in 2009. And he starts out by saying, on this day, we gather because we have chosen hope over fear, unity of purpose over conflict and discord. The time has come to reaffirm our enduring spirit, to choose our better history, to carry forward that precious gift, that noble idea passed on from generation to generation, the God-given promise that all are equal, all are free, and all deserve a chance to pursue their full value of happiness. And I don't know about you, Lola, but I believe that we all have to play a role in making the world a better place for our children as well as our senior citizens and other adults. So these books that we read today were just a small snippet of how we can begin to work toward change and hope and know that we all are empowered to do something. So any closing words for our audience?
Well, there is a short story that comes to mind that was written by Aesop's Fable, and it is about the lion and the mouse. And the moral to that story is once the lion was captured and the mouse had to help him, and the lion laughed at the mouse, and the mouse did indeed help him. Mm-hmm. The moral to the story is sometimes, just sometimes, the weak can help the strong.
Thank you so much. Until next week, this has been Once Upon a Time with Dr. Jody, with my special guest today, author and storyteller Lola Charles. And we are look forward to having you come back next week. This is On the Go Radio, powering the voice of community and change.